Hello, everybody. So I feel like that I'm at a reunion because I've seen a lot of you guys before. I've met you, but you know what? I've met a lot of new people here, which I told Charlie is absolutely amazing. So we're going to talk about influence today. And we're going to talk about influence, and what qualifies me to talk about influence? Well, I'm going to tell you. We're going to talk about a gentleman today. There are 12 of us in the world that have studied under him. 12 that can actually teach us material. 2 of them are women. I'm the only woman in the United States. Wow, we have a lot to learn about influence. But I want to talk to you today a little bit about influence. I want to tell you about a gentleman I saw on stage not too long ago. He was very successful. I'm not going to tell you his name. He's had a book out. He was at a conference telling people how to be successful. Now, he said, we have a limited amount of resources. We have a limited amount of time. We have a limited amount of money. And he was telling us how he was a father, and he had a wife that stayed at home and supported him. And he was sharing how to become successful. And he said, all you have to do is work this program and give it 10 hours a week and you'll be successful. Well, there was a lady in the back of the room who raised her hand, and she stood up and she said, what if you don't have 10 hours a week? And he said, well, if you don't have 10 hours a week, then I question your desire to want it. And the entire room gasped. Because the lady was in the back of the room. She had her 10-month-old strapped to her. She had driven across country to attend the conference, had done way more than the rest of us in the room to actually be able to make it there. And it dawned on me, yeah, time and money are limited resources, but for women, we have a couple more. We have the limited resource of our attention, because it's being pulled in a million different directions. And we have the limited resource of our energy. With that, we've got to be strategic on how we're using our energy and what we're doing with our time, right? And our attention. So when we look at how do you master your influence skills, I'm going to teach you today very quickly, because Charlie won't give me several days. This is a 2-day course, and I'm going to just share with you some highlights of it. So as I get green button, yep. I know you did, so I told a little story. So if people miss it, they won't. Got you covered, girl. Got you covered. We use influence every day, right? Yeah? Who used influence today? What'd you do? Got up, got dressed, you got your colleagues to do something. On a normal day, you might have children you're trying to, encourage to get in the car. How many people in this room would like to have more people say yes to them? Anybody would rather have more people say yes to you than say no? Wow, yeah. We want people to say yes to our request. But you know what? Most of the time, we're just winging it. We don't know how to get people to say yes to our request. And what I hope for us today is that when you leave today, you will not be winging it. As we study these principles together, if you decide to take my course, you won't ever wing how to get somebody to say yes to you ever again. Doesn't that sound nice? If we've got limited attention and limited energy, we're not wasting our time and our energy. One mistake that people make is that they think influence is tactical. It's not. It's strategic. And why is it strategic? Why is it so important that we are strategic about what we do? Well, that's because we want to be agents of influence. We want to be a person who effectively uses the information that's relevant so everybody can make an informed decision. How do we do that? How do we make the information and use the relevant information and to be ethical in it? Anybody ever had or been influenced to buy something in an unethical manner? How'd you feel? Come on, yell it out. How'd you feel? Violated. What else? Slimy, vulnerable, cheated. Exactly. So we get this idea that if we're going to influence somebody or we're going to persuade them, that it might actually be slimy, right? That we might actually violate another person. No, when we talk about being influential and being agents of influence, it's actually a good thing. We're actually creating a win-win situation for everybody involved. But we have to make sure that we're ethical. So how do we do that? We make sure, first of all, it's wise. Okay? We make sure it's truthful. And we make sure it's naturally available. We don't make up things, right? We make sure it's there. So when I talk to people about this, when we say, is it truthful? That's pretty easy. Is it naturally available? Well, we're going to learn as you go through that there's some things naturally available you've probably never thought about using. But is it wise? The other day I was at a fast food place and I heard one of the workers tell a customer, well, we can't do that anymore. My manager says such and such and such. She was trying to calm the customer down. It was truthful, right? She was trying to influence her to be calm. It was truthful. It was naturally available. It was information she had, but it wasn't wise for her to use because it created a bad situation. So when I talk about if it's ethical, we have to look at if it's ethical or not. Oops. Okay, how do I go back, guys? Dr. Robert Cialdini. Has anybody ever heard of Dr. Robert Cialdini? One person in the room, couple people, 3 people in the room, right? Dr. Robert Cialdini is known as the godfather of influence. He is somebody I just admire like you wouldn't believe, which is why I went to study under him. You see, back in the 80s, Dr. Cialdini, who is a research psychologist, did something that was never seen before in the research field. He wanted to look if what he was saying in the laboratory also played out in real life. Now you have to realize how risky that was for him, because nobody had ever done it before. So my friend Dr. Cialdini decided he was going to go out in real life. He changed his clothes, he changed his demeanor, he put on wigs, and he went undercover. He went undercover to places like marketing agencies, used car salesman training. He actually even went undercover in the cult because he wanted to know what were they doing that caused people to say yes to their request. Then he took what he learned in real life and he took it back to the laboratory. And what he found were 6 principles of persuasion. We're going to quickly go through them today. The first one is reciprocity. Reciprocity is we feel the need, we feel compelled to give back to somebody who's given back to us, given something to us. If somebody takes out your mail when you're on vacation, you feel compelled to bring them back a gift card or a gift from your trip. That's reciprocity. The second one is liking. We prefer to do business with people we know, like, and trust. In fact, we will look for excuses to do business with them, even if it's more expensive. The next one is consensus or social proof. This is the whole premise of Yelp. If I am in a new city, like here in New Orleans, where I'm not familiar, and I want to go out to dinner, what do? I go onto Yelp, and what do I look for? The stars, right? I look to see what other people have done in the same situation, right? Authority. We're going to talk a little bit more about authority. But when we are unsure what to do, We look to people who are an authority to guide us in our decision making. Consistency. Consistency is that we remain consistent with something we have previously taken a stand on. We don't want to be what's called wishy-washy, right? We want to keep our word, so we remain consistent. Scarcity. Black Friday is the ultimate of this. However, I will tell you, Black Friday is not any longer using the principle of scarcity, because Black Friday is all week now. Okay? We view things to be more valuable when they're scarce. And it's an emotional reaction. All right, who's watching my time? Because I have a tendency to talk, which is why Charlie started me early. So somebody watch my time for me, okay? Because I can talk about this forever. But it's really interesting. And the one thing is these principles, they cross time, they cross cultures, they cross ages. Okay? These principles work if we know how to apply them. Well, guess what, ladies? We can learn. We can learn how to apply these principles, and we can become more effective. In fact, studying these can make you 300 to 400 times more likely to get a yes to your request. There is one more principle. It's not on my slide. Dr. Cialdini just discovered another one, so there are now 7. The next one is what he's calling unity. That means we're bonded with people, bonded with family, bonded with friends, bonded by situations, and that unity plays a huge impact. So we can actually draw on unity sometimes to help us. Decision triggers. A few years back, they said that we had about 3,000 marketing messages coming to us a day, just a few years ago. Now, it's more like 5,000. 5,000 marketing messages coming towards us. What do we do with those? Well, we have something called decision triggers. Has anybody ever heard that before? Decision triggers, let's make it real. Let's talk about something we do every day. Let's talk about the grocery store. Okay? If you go to the grocery store, you're very likely going to see a sticker, something like this: everyday low price on random objects. In fact, I found this one at my local grocery store. Everyday low price. Now, as a shopper, we should know there's nothing special about this, right? It's everyday low price. We should know the price of what we're buying. Shouldn't have any impact on us. But because we are bombarded with so many decisions and so many things that we have to decide so quickly, we look at these little stickers and they make a difference. So they took these little stickers and they put them randomly at a large grocery store chain. They asked the managers to put them on random objects for 2 weeks and then to move them in 2 weeks and put them on another object. What they found is that sales doubled. Doubled. They went back to the grocery store managers and they said, "What happened?" And the grocery store managers said, "We have no idea. But you and I do, because we understand that what's happening is that people are relying on decision triggers to help them decide what's best and what to help them make a decision with." See, we assume that other people know the obvious, but it's really our job to bring that obvious to the conscious. That's what happened with those decision triggers. They were brought to our conscious. as an everyday low price. Now, I will be honest with you, there's some controversy whether those stickers were ethical or not ethical, because they feel a little manipulative, but at the same time, they were true, right? They weren't telling you it was on sale, and it wasn't on sale. It was just pointing out to you it was an everyday low price. So we're going to take one principle today, and we're going to dig in just a little bit deeper to it. We're not even going to scratch the surface even on this one principle. But I want to share with you a little bit about what it looks like and how you can actually use the principles. So I picked authority. So authority is people who rely on superior knowledge or perspective for guidance on how to respond or behave in a certain situation. This person needs to have credibility, and that credibility includes expertise and being trustworthy. We're talking about people who are not in authority. In this picture, who's in authority? The police officer, right? He's in authority. But if we were talking about religious things or civil rights movement, who's the authority? Martin Luther King. When we talk about the principle of authority, we're not talking about people in authority, we're talking about people that are an authority. Can you think of some examples of people who are an authority? Doctors. What else? Scientists. Engineers. Thank you. Who else? Teachers. Anybody else? Parents. Well, parents would be an authority or somebody in authority? They're somebody in authority. So an authority is somebody who is an authority on a subject. So think about your CPA, right? So this isn't in my slides, but I'm going to share it because I love this story. So they did a study on with a 31-year-old man who did jaywalking. Who in here knows what jaywalking is? What's jaywalking? Tell me. Crossing the wrong way on the street, not in the crosswalk, right? So they took the study and they decided who will follow this 31-year-old gentleman across the street. So they put him in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and they watched who followed him across the street. Then they put him in a suit and a tie. They measured who followed him across the street. Any idea? Well, first of all, would you guys be likely to follow somebody more likely in a suit or jeans across the street? No? How likely do you think they were to follow him across the street wearing a suit than in jeans and a t-shirt? Any guesses? More? Give me a guess. Huh? 4 times? 350% more times were people willing to have him cross the street, to follow him because he had a suit on. You see, authority, we see outward signs. Remember when we talked about decision triggers? Okay? When we talked about decision triggers, we see certain things as authority. We have what's called fast brains. Remember when you first learned to drive a car? Okay? When you started to go around a curve, you were thinking, all right, when do I turn the wheel? When do I hit the gas? When do I let off the gas? How much gas do I put? You remember that? Okay. Raise your hands if you've driven past your exit. What happened? You see, when we're learning, it's in our slow brain. But after we've learned something, it moves to what we call fast thinking, or in our fast brain. And it becomes automatic, and that's where the decision triggers lie. That's where many of the principles lie that we're talking about. And it's what we talk about when we need to bring those things to the consciousness. So, clothing. What else? What else can be decision triggers? Think about it. How you dress. What else? What? How they stand. Their posture, yep. How they present themselves. Brand recognition? Jewelry? What about a doctor? What do you see with a doctor? Stethoscope? White coat? Well, we heard from is she still in the room? Physical therapist? I don't see her. Okay, we heard from her this morning. But see what we, almost forgot the slide. Leadership isn't authority based on the position you have, it's influence based on the trust you've earned. Okay, so you've got to earn trust. Physical therapist study. I can. Leadership is an authority based on the position you've been given. It's influence based on the trust you've earned. Remember when I said when we talk about authority, how are we authority? I said that we have to be trustworthy and we have to be credible, right? We have to be an expert in what we're talking about. So there was a study done. It was Dr. Cialdini and his students that were called in by some physical therapists. They had patients. Anybody here ever worked in healthcare? Okay, I've worked in healthcare, okay? The one thing that you have with patients, and these were particularly stroke patients, is compliance. So this physical therapy agency was having a problem with people not going home and doing their exercises they were told to do. Okay, so they were leaving, not doing it, and they were like, these are stroke victims. They need to be doing their exercises. They can't get well if they don't do them. So they called in Dr. Cialdini and his students, and they said, can you help us get our patients to become more compliant with completing their exercises? So Dr. Cialdini walked in, and he looked around, and he said, actually, I can. What he noticed is that they had none of their degrees or awards on the wall. So he instructed them to take a wall, right as people walk through the door, and put all of the certifications, their degrees, and their awards on the wall. Now remember when I said you're driving, bringing things to the consciousness, the obvious, right? If you're going to a physical therapy place, you've probably checked out your insurance. Do you know they're probably credible? Right? The only thing they changed was putting these degrees on the wall. They had over a 30% increase in compliance just by putting their degrees up. So I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if there's any in the room, there are some in the back. How's your signature on your email? Do you have your credentials listed? Do you tell people your credentials? No. But we should, because if physical therapists can get a 30% increase in compliance, guess what? People want to know what your credentials are. They forget it. So in my name, I have Gail Rudolph, CMCT, CFRE. Okay, what does that mean? A lot of letters, right? Lots of C's. So underneath my name, not only do I have the credentials behind it, but I've spelled it out. Cialdini Method Certified Trainer, Certified Fundraising Executive. It is right there in my signature. If you are going into a meeting with people that you have never met with before, when do they need to know your credentials? When is the most important time for them to know your credentials? Before the meeting. How can you do that? Anybody have any ideas? Send your bio ahead of time. Make sure that they have it. Make sure that they have it in front of them. We didn't have time today, because I wanted 2 hours and Charlie wouldn't give it to me. But we didn't have time today. But every time I speak, if you've heard me speak before, I play a video before I come on, right? I do that because it tells you that I'm an authority or I'm an expert. Because there's a difference between telling it, right, and bragging. See, a video can tell you a whole lot more about my credentials, my certification, where I went to school, that I have a Stanford Graduate School of Business degree. Where if I stand up here and tell you that, it sounds like bragging, doesn't it? So use your ability to show that you are an authority in the field that you are. You can do that with a video. You can do that with a bio. But what if you only have a short amount of time? What is the one thing I said about myself when I walked up here? Does anybody remember? I'm one of 12 people, and there are 2 females, and I'm the only female in the United States. Why did I tell you that? Credibility, but I only told you that because that's the most important, credible thing about what I'm doing right now. If you're in a meeting and they're going around the table and they're asking you to introduce yourself, think about ahead of time the one thing that pertains to that meeting. Maybe something different for another meeting, but what's the one thing that pertains to that meeting that tells people that you're an authority? Remember, it should be obvious. But what happens? We need to bring the obvious to the conscious level. You know, I'm going to go back here because we're not done yet. I cut a bunch of slides last night, so we're not going to do that. How about it? I want to tell you, somebody's supposed to tell me the time, so I've got a little bit. It's time. She told me I could have 30 minutes, so she started me early. So I'm going to tell you one more thing. Can I tell you one more thing? Well, first of all, let me point out, those degrees on the wall, how much did that cost the agency? Nothing, nominal, right? Maybe the pictures of the frames to put them in and the nails to go on the wall. 30% compliance increase by putting them on the wall. But let me tell you about something else. There's a real estate agency. And you could call the real estate agency and the receptionist would pick up the phone and you'd say, hey, I'm looking for commercial real estate. Okay, let me transfer you to Joe. I'm looking for a, residential, we're looking for a new home. Okay, well, let me transfer you to Sally. Dr. Cialdini and his students went in and they trained her to do something different. She would pick up the phone, somebody would say, I need commercial property. Oh, well, let me transfer you to Joe. Joe does an amazing job with commercial property. He's been with us for 15 years. I know you'll be satisfied. She makes the call. I'm looking for a residential property. Well, let me send you over here to Sally. Sally's amazing. Her customers love her. They just praise her about how much she always finds the right home for the people. 15.5% increase in signed contracts. It doesn't matter who's introducing you. It can be your receptionist. But just taking the time to point out somebody's credentials make a huge difference. How much did that cost that real estate agency? Nothing. This is why I love studying these principles, because most of them don't require a big investment. They just require being able to learn how to activate them and to amplify them. So I'm doing something today that I've never done before. Charlie gave me permission. I'm giving you the opportunity to learn all the principles. Activators, amplifiers, and we actually will work through scenarios so that you bring your influence problem and we work through it. I do a Zoom course. Depending on how many people are in the course, it's either 3 Fridays in a row for about 3.5 hours. When I teach this live, it's 2 full days. If there's quite a few people in the course, it becomes a 4-week course. But 3.5 hours we still push it on Zoom, but you don't have to go anywhere. This is dictated to me. It's normally $2,400. Ugh. Okay. I told Charlie, I'm going to do this at cost for you guys because these principles are so, so important and they're life-changing. They will change your lives for $9.97. There's a sheet that's going to be going around if it's not already handed out. I'm doing as many payment options as I possibly can. I don't do this for anybody else. I've known Charlie for 4 or 5 years we've been doing stuff together. This makes the difference because they're scientific principles and you can learn them and you can apply them. They make the difference of getting people to say yes to your request. I built my business on these principles. I can get people on the phone. I'm not manipulating them. I'm not telling them that something's, scarce when it's not scarce. I'm being honest. I can feel good about myself, but I can help them actually to say yes. So there's some payment options on there. If you sign up this weekend, before the end of the weekend, I'm also going to put you on my online platform so you can get a special bonus on how to deal with toxic people from my book, because that's always helpful too. Questions? I bet I'm out of time.
How does culture play into?
How does what?
Culture.
Culture? Actually, it doesn't. These principles cross culture, time, and age. So they stand the test of time. So once you learn them, you can use them with everybody, which is what makes them so unique.
Even if they have certain biases about your culture?
Even if they have biases, because remember, these work on what's called our natural tendencies. So these work on the things that are unseen. Remember when I talked about when you're driving a car and you learn how to drive a car and then it becomes automatic? So we have automatic responses that happen with us. I call that our slow brain and our fast brain. Dr. Daniel Kahneman actually did a lot of work on that. But people talk about it as the conscious and the unconscious. I like to talk about it as how our brain works. If I was to ask you and yell out the answer, 2 plus 2, 4. Okay, if I was to ask you 276 plus 97, not so much, right? Okay, 2 plus 4 is in our fast brain. Okay, the other answer, which I have no idea what it is, right? You have to get out your phone. I don't even remember what I said right now. But that's your slow brain. So what these principles do is they act on our natural tendencies. I love watching court cases. There was a court case between Pennzoil and Texaco a few years back. And in that court case, there was, it was like billions of dollars, and it was very, very complicated. And even the scholars were trying to decide who was going to get it. And the jury came back really quickly. And they were surprised. So not only were we surprised, but apparently the reporters were surprised. So they went to the foreman, whose name was Joe Shannon, right? Now, this was a big case. I mean, the lawyers themselves made like $33 million, okay? So they didn't want to lose this case. But all of a sudden, the jury came back like that. And when they asked the foreman why, he said things like, well, the VP had a pompous attitude. And, the witness, the expert, didn't look us in the eye. You see, we resort, when we are overwhelmed, to our natural tendencies, to those things that are innate. So when we talk about those decision triggers, and they're helping it sell things double the amount because we see a little sign by them, that's because it's innate in us. We're moving too fast now. Way too fast. Life is, really going by fast. So we rely on those decision triggers. We rely on those innate things that are happening. And what's great about these principles is that they work. They talk and they teach us how to interact with those innate principles that everybody has.